Hi, I'm Michael, the Improv GM. Today we're going to talk about some role-playing tech you should be using in your campaigns to make, in this case, character connections and NPCs more important than they tend to be in most games. And that is relationship mappings. It's part of the pathway system from Smallville. This is an incredibly powerful, versatile, and easy-to-use tool that will help create deeper characters than they tend to make on their own quickly and hopefully help kill some of the analysis paralysis that sometimes is a part of how people create PCs or NPCs. One of the problems with what we tend to use for player character relationships or who they are, you're using tools that are designed often for theater or novels, where you can kind of decide all of those things in a vacuum by yourself. Then you come down to, oh, here are questions. I've read the entire play. Here's all the things we know, which is not how role-playing games work. And I've talked a little bit about this before. But if you get all of the group together, you can use relationship mapping in order to help them create characters that will surprise them, that will give you lots of ideas for story potential that comes out of the characters and their relationships, as opposed to some sort of outside quest that's been sat down upon the rest of the group. And so now I'm going to show you what relationship map looks like at the very beginning. I have used one of my favorite tools, which is a name generator, because I suck at coming up with names. And I've created 3 player characters. These are, for our purposes, these are the 3 people playing in the game to make this easy. Now, we're not going to go through all the stuff with all of them, but I'll show you how it starts. I use this same technique to teach my creative writing kids how to create character situations, which we then spool out into a much larger work that they work on. My acting students use it, and I also teach it each year at Illinois State High School Theater Festival as a way of, particularly ensembles, bringing more character to their character. So we start off, these are our 3 main characters. It kind of helps with this if you don't go in with any real big preconceived ideas. If you're trying to fit something you've already got fully formed in your head or mostly formed, you're going to find that you're going to fight it more than you want to. So we start off with just a couple ideas, just the names. Okay, so we're going to take, and each circle here is going to be an NPC who's important. Why don't we start with Christine? So we take Christine, and we give her a person who is important to her. So I'm going to go with Elliot Niles. So I have to decide who Elliot Niles is. And I like the idea that Elliot Niles is... Now, Google Drawing actually makes this relatively simple to do if you're working with a group. So I'm just going to create a little bit of text here. Elliot Niles is... One of the things you want to do when you're creating these relationships, just saying, oh, this is my dad, doesn't really tell us anything. Because if it's your father and you go around and ask 8 of your friends what their relationship is like with their father, they're going to have very different things to tell you. If I know this is someone's friend, is not particularly interesting. Is this your best friend? Is this the friend that you only see every once in a while, but you always enjoy when you see each other and wish you hung out more? Is this that person who's just kind of part of your friend group because of momentum, and if you were more direct, you'd have dropped them from your friend group? Those all are more specific and tell us why this person matters to your character. Now, since I'm Christine's player, I would be able to go, okay, I'm going to make some decisions about Christine here. We're going to make that a bit smaller. And they are laboratory co-workers. They're rivals for advancement and will sabotage each other. So that is who they are to each other. So this tells me something about Christine I didn't know before. 1, she works in a lab. Cool. 2, she's ambitious. Ambitious enough that these 2 are willing to sabotage each other for whatever advancement that they're going for. Okay, cool. So I've got that. Then what I'm going to do is, in this case, I'm going to put a second one here for her. We're going to start off with 2. Okay, so I rolled up, as far as the name generator goes, Brenda Tempest. So I got to figure out who is Brenda Tempest to Christine. Now, there's a part of me that wants to make this like her aunt who kind of was there to raise her and is one of those people that has helped push her to be extremely ambitious. But we kind of already have that. I already know she's ambitious. Finding out why she's ambitious right this moment is less interesting than deciding what is something in the opposite direction that might make things interesting for the character besides just getting into her ambition in her professional life. Okay, so what I decided for Brenda is this is Christine's girlfriend. Brenda is a comfort to Christine, but they're kind of just emotionally leeching off of each other because they can't get out of their own heads and problems. They're at the point in that relationship where resentment hasn't built in yet, but they've kind of taken each other for granted in ways in which they're not always thinking of the other person, they're more thinking of their own needs. Well, this ties into the selfishness. I think this is something that might be able to be remedied between the two of them, but right now, Christine is worried enough about her own world and advancement that she's not necessarily there as much for Brenda. Now, Brenda being kind of the same to her, because I do say they're emotionally leeching off each other, I don't know why yet. And that may actually come up in another step. So what I'm going to do is quickly put together one for each of the other two characters. And I'm going to show you then how they start to tie into each other. Now, for their purposes, I'm just going to put one on each of them. There's not necessarily a specific amount. This is one I recommend taking some time, adding these, deciding what they are. You can also, and I'll show you in a moment, when you can also put triangles or diamonds in there to represent locations that are important, but those tend to be less needed when it comes to how these work, though it can provide some anchors. Now, if you're actually doing this for real, you're going to make the Google Drawings works really well on here, but you make the canvas you're creating it on a whole lot bigger so that you're able to actually put all of these things in here, and I'll show you what a relationship map fully formed looks like at the end of this. I've decided to make Montrell's wife, Leslie Brower. The relationship has been difficult at times, but they're pulled through together after the death of their daughter. So they've had their rough times, but the relationship is better off for it. And we've got Olive and Corbin. If they're Corbin's her stepbrother, they keep each other stable as their childhood, throughout their childhoods, and see each other as truly brother or sister, very close. I don't know what kept them stable yet. I don't know what was wrong yet in their life that made it unstable, but that's a question I don't have to answer right now. In relationship mapping, you're answering a single question at a time. Who is this person? Why are they important to this character? Okay, so see here I've expanded a little bit, and I have placed here a location that's important to Montrell and his wife, the cabin in the woods. This is where they went for their honeymoon, and they also went back to it to regain some closeness. It's become an annual pilgrimage now. So they have put something together in their life where they now know that this is something we go back to over and over again. So as you start to create these, to start to add more NPCs, next step that you put at various times in it is this. You start to connect NPCs to other NPCs, and eventually NPCs to other players. I will put a quick version of what I do for the high school down in the show notes so that you can check out and see these are the steps that I have them go through. We'll say Elliot and Corbin. I like the idea that they work together. Corbin's the boss who prefers Elliot to Christine. So essentially, for the player characters, the brother that one is very, very close to, we have now just made kind of the nemesis in some respects. Well, the gatekeeper of her ability to advance, and who's not particularly a fan of hers, someone very close to the other character. We already have some conflict that can become a part of the story because of that. So here I'm thinking, I want to connect some other NPCs. I want to connect ones who haven't been connected. If I'm Montrell's player, we've already gotten Corbin attached to someone. I'm going to attach to Brendan. We've got a simplified version right now, so these are the only choices I have. So I'm going to connect my wife with Christine's girlfriend. So I decide Leslie's current target is Brenda. She is spying on Brenda for a governmental agency. They become friends through a film society. So at this point, in making this decision, I have made some decisions on the genre that we're going to be looking at. There is at least going to be some sort of crime or something being committed. You have a reason why this governmental agency is keeping an eye on Brenda. So we have some tensions coming in there. And then the interesting question is, when it gets to the point where something's going to fall on Brenda, has Christine going to want to salvage a relationship enough to do something about it when it happens? Or is she going to be kind of lost in her own world? So as you start to add more and more of these, you end up with a really interesting web of characters, like almost like a soap opera, which actually works really well in role-playing games that are about people and their relationships. And even if it's not one that's quite like that, you can actually create your different factions in a town very quickly this same way by starting to draw them on here are the different people. Here's the church. This is the spy agency. This is the thieves guild. This is the captain of the guard. The problems they've been having. You start to put this out there. You can create a world that feels like it didn't just pop into being for the players. It helps you determine how these characters fit together. This is also great for writing. If you want to create a story, this can help give you ideas. By the time you're done, it's hard not to have them. So, relationship mapping is from Smallville, which there'll be more with Cortex Plus Prime, which should be coming out, I think, sometime later this year. There was a Kickstarter was done for. You can also get on Cam Banks' Patreon if you want to see how it is working so far. There'll be more information in that. I will leave my truncated version of the pathway system for the relationship map in a link. I hope you enjoy it. First, I'm going to show you, this is what a full relationship map looks like if it's created specifically for Smallville. Now, Smallville relationship map ends up looking like this, where you have locations, a whole bunch of people, the squares are the player characters. We have this complex web that appears completely impenetrable if you sit down and just look at the whole thing at once. But if you created it, what the players will often do is go back to the physical, if it's physical or even electronic. They'll go back to the map itself, even if I have thrown information into a spreadsheet, which I tend to do for prep purposes because it's a little bit easier if it gets this complex. But they'll come back to it for the purposes of refreshing themselves in some of the relationships, remembering how these things matter to them. And in it, we create what the story is. We create how all of these people and places can come together, and they let me know what matters. So, highly recommend using it. Takes a session to sit down and do it, but if you sit down and do it and then people make characters, they're going to know why they fit in with everything, and they're going to know what's going on in the world. If you're playing a game where that's not what you need, this is still great for figuring out what's going on in a town or some other organization players go into. If they are going into a place to deal with a cult, you could draw up the cult like this pretty quickly and have a nuanced organization as opposed to generic mobs that rush you because, cult. So, Pathways, hope you enjoy it.